Hi, everyone. Welcome to this discussion about education in the United States. Education represents one of society's basic social institutions, and by definition, social institutions are very large arrangements designed to ensure the survival of society. For societies to survive, they must transmit the appropriate knowledge and skills to its newcomers. The system of education is the primary institution for doing that. Each country has its own style of delivering education to citizens, but I want to focus on the United States, in particular, how features of U.S. education create both order and conflict in society. When thinking about education, beginning in kindergarten and lasting through 12th grade, at least one characteristic stands out to me, and that's conservatism. The conservative nature of education generates both order and conflict. Conservatism Conservatism means holding to traditional attitudes and values and being cautious about change and innovation. In thinking of my own education, I recall many different traditions or activities that reinforce American values. For example, pledging allegiance to the flag in the morning, having to memorize and recite the 272 words of the Gettysburg Address in my third grade class, and memorizing and singing the Star Spangled Banner. At the social level, these rituals remind us about the importance of freedom in society and the work it takes to preserve it. At the individual level, educators and some neuroscientists, William Clem to name one, have found that students who were required to memorize from an early age often go on to have more capacity to focus on educational tasks as high school and college students. We can extend this line of thought to include memorization of the alphabet or multiplication table and how these activities reinforce the importance of literacy in mathematics and might provide the foundation for critical or higher level thinking. It seems clear to me from these examples that education has a conservative function. It helps us fit into society. But what about the potential of education to promote conflict? One criticism has been that education discourages us from straying too far from the norms and traditions. To say it differently, some people believe education encourages us to think, but not to the point where thinking interferes with the educational system itself or other social institutions. One common example cited by critics is the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA. This law, passed in 2015, governs the U.S. K 12 public education policy. It replaced what you may have known as the No Child Left Behind Act, but it did not eliminate periodic standardized tests to students. Currently, students in each state every year are tested third through eighth grade and once again their junior year of high school. The standardized tests determine each student's capabilities in the classroom and the success of the state in implementing its educational goals. The intent of the ESSA is to hold states, school systems, and teachers accountable for narrowing the racial and social class differences in the performance of students. While standardized testing may be intended to narrow the achievement gap, it may also narrow the scope of what is taught in classrooms. Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I encountered a case of how education can ironically inhibit critical thinking. I participated in a study of elementary school teachers with a math professor at Francis Marion University. The purpose of the study was to observe how sixth grade teachers use calculators to teach addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. We used grant money to buy them a bunch of calculators. My colleague observed teachers in the classroom, and my role was to interview teachers after the semester to ask about their experiences of using calculators to teach math. We learned that they adopted a conservative rather than innovative approach to using calculators. They typically use them for two reasons: social control and time saving. In regard to social control, teachers would sometimes say, if you don't behave today, you won't get to play with the calculators. The calculators were very colorful, by the way, and Students loved playing with them. The calculator functioned more as a toy than an instrument for learning in the classroom. In regard to saving time, teachers would sometimes have students work math problems by hand and then pass out calculators for students to check their work. And this prevented the teachers from having to grade all the papers. In my interviews with teachers, I learned that they felt uneasy about creating lesson plans that involved calculators because the students could not use them when taking standardized tests at the end of the semester. I don't teach math, so I asked my colleague in the math department about how calculators could be used to teach creatively rather than conservatively. He said teachers could have asked students to use the calculator to generate problems rather than to figure out answers. Didn't really know what that meant at first, but he explained that the teachers could have begun the lesson by writing the answer 5 on the board and then have students use the calculator to generate fraction problems that would yield the number 5. 5 divided by 1, 25 divided by 5, 20 divided by 4. They could just play around with it. And the students would learn an important lesson, and that is that there are many different solutions for solving problems. This would be using the calculator to stimulate critical thinking rather than for purposes of social control or saving time. As a social institution, education transmits knowledge to students as a way of bringing them into an already established culture. This conservative function provides stability for society. At the same time, conservatism has the potential to conflict with the expansion of knowledge necessary to solve problems in society.